The great hall of the Galaxy Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of alien beings filled the floating seats that circled around a central platform. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled with their own light. Others were clouds of gas that changed colors as they spoke. Giant insects with metal parts replacing their limbs clicked and buzzed to each other. Ancient rock creatures that had lived for millions of years sat silent and still. At the center of it all stood Elena Vasquez, the human ambassador from Earth. She looked very small compared to the massive aliens around her. Her simple black suit seemed plain next to the glowing robes and energy fields that covered the other beings. But her eyes were calm and steady as she looked up at the council members who towered above her. The air hummed with the sound of 1,000 different languages being translated into each other. The smell was strange, too, a mix of metal, ozone, and things that humans had no words for. Elena had gotten used to these smells over the past 3 years. She had learned to ignore the way some aliens looked at her like she was a bug that had crawled into their perfect meeting. High above her head, Prime Zephyrian began to speak. He was the oldest and most powerful being in the galaxy. His body was made of pure light that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "We are gathered here today to deal with the human problem," he said. "For 3 years, we have watched this young species spread across our galaxy. They have taken systems that were not theirs to take. They have built colonies where they should not build. They have refused to follow the laws that have kept peace in our galaxy for 10,000 years. Elena listened without moving. She had known this day would come. The other humans on Earth had known it too. They had all been waiting for it. "The humans refused to let us study their genetics," another council member said. This one looked like a giant tree made of metal and crystal. "They refused to give up their weapons. They refuse to accept their place in the natural order of things. They are chaotic," said a being that looked like a floating brain in a glass jar. "They make decisions based on emotions instead of logic. They are dangerous to the stability of our civilization." More voices joined in. Each alien species had complaints about the humans. Some said humans were too violent. Others said they were too unpredictable. A few said humans asked too many questions and wanted to know too much about things that were not their business. Elena smiled a little as she listened. These beings thought they understood humans. They thought they knew what Earth was capable of. They had watched human ships for 3 years and decided that humans were weak and primitive. They saw the small colonies humans had built and thought that was all there was. They were very wrong. Prime Zephyrian raised one hand made of glowing energy. The hall became silent. "The Council has decided," he announced. "Humanity must submit to full integration into our system. You will give up your independence. You will allow us to control your military. You will accept our guidance in all things. If you refuse, we will use force. This is your final warning," he continued. "Accept our terms, or face the combined might of the Galaxy Council fleet. We have ships that can destroy stars. We have weapons that can break planets in half. You have seen only a tiny part of our power." Elena stood quietly for a moment. Around her, thousands of alien beings waited for her answer. They expected her to beg for mercy. They expected her to ask for more time. They expected her to surrender. Instead, she asked for permission to speak. Prime Zephyrian seemed amused. The light that made up his body flickered in what might have been laughter. "Very well," he said. "Let the primitive speak her final words before she accepts the inevitable." Elena stepped forward. Her voice carried clearly through the vast hall, even though she spoke in a normal tone. The translation systems made sure every being could understand her. "Honored Council," she began, "you have made a mistake, a very big mistake." Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Others hissed or clicked in annoyance. How dare this tiny human suggest that the Great Galaxy Council could make an error? "You think you understand humanity," Elena continued. "You think you know what we are capable of. For 3 years you have watched our ships. You have monitored our communications. You have studied our colonies." Her smile grew wider. "But you have missed the most important thing of all. You have made assumptions about us based on what you know about other species. You think we are like everyone else you have conquered." The hall was getting quieter. Some of the aliens were starting to pay closer attention to the small human woman. "You see, there is something you do not know about humanity. Something we have been very careful not to tell you." Elena paused. The silence in the hall was complete now. "Those ships you have been tracking for 3 years, those were not colony ships. They were scouts. The colonies you have been watching, they were not our expansion. They were our forward observation posts." Prime Zephyrian's light flickered. For the first time in thousands of years, he felt something like uncertainty. "The communications you have been monitoring, they were not primitive radio signals. They were quantum encrypted coordination messages between fleets you never knew existed." Elena's voice grew stronger. "You made your biggest mistake when you assumed we were alone. When you thought Earth was just one small planet with a few simple ships." She looked directly at Prime Zephyrian. "We have been preparing for this moment for 200 years. While you were comfortable in your power, we were building. While you were watching our decoys, we were surrounding you." Alarms began to ring throughout the station. "And now," Elena said with a smile that would haunt the Galaxy Council forever, "it's finally time to show you what humanity really is." The alarms screaming through the council station were like nothing the aliens had ever heard before. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Emergency warnings flooded the communication channels in dozens of languages. The massive space station shook as defensive systems came online for the first time in centuries. Elena stood calmly in the center of the chaos. Around her, alien beings were running in all directions. Some were trying to reach their ships. Others were shouting orders in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal. The giant crystal beings rang like bells as they moved. The gas creatures swirled faster, their colors shifting to angry reds and oranges. Prime Zephyrian's light form flickered rapidly. His voice boomed across the hall. "What is the meaning of this? What are your sensors detecting?" A crystal being that served as the Council's military advisor spoke with a voice like breaking glass. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures across 12 star systems. Ships are decloaking everywhere. The signatures do not match any known technology." "How many ships?" Prime Zephyrian demanded. There was a long pause. "Sir, our computers are still counting. Current estimate is over 50,000 vessels." The hall went silent except for the continuing alarms. 50,000 ships was more than most species had in their entire fleets. The council members had expected to face perhaps a few hundred human vessels at most. Elena smiled and touched a small device on her wrist. The air above her shimmered, and suddenly another human appeared as a hologram. This was Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief military strategist. She looked like a grandmother with gray hair and kind eyes. She also looked very, very smart. "Hello, Council," Dr. Chen said politely. "I thought this would be a good time to explain a few things about humanity that you seem to have missed." Prime Zephyrian's form solidified slightly as he tried to understand what was happening. "This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected any large fleet movements. We monitor all space within 100 light years of this station." Dr. Chen nodded. "Yes, you do. Your sensors are very good, but you have been looking for the wrong things." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared around the hall. They showed star maps with moving dots that represented ships. Thousands and thousands of ships that were appearing out of nowhere. You see, when humanity first developed faster-than-light travel 200 years ago, we did not immediately contact other species. We spent those 2 centuries exploring, learning, preparing. The holograms changed to show hidden bases built inside asteroids and on rogue planets drifting in the dark between stars, massive shipyards that had been invisible to Council sensors, weapons testing facilities in empty solar systems that no one had bothered to explore. While you were comfortable in your palaces, we were working in the dark. We built our fleets in places where no one would think to look. We powered them with technologies that your sensors were not programmed to detect. Prime Zephyrian was beginning to understand the scope of what the humans had done. You have been planning this for 200 years? Not this exactly, Dr. Chen said. We hoped we could join the galactic community peacefully, but we are not naive. We know that powerful civilizations do not usually welcome new competitors, so we prepared for the possibility that you would try to destroy us or enslave us. Elena spoke up from her position in the center of the hall. Every human who came to your worlds in the past 3 years was gathering information. Every cultural exchange student was mapping your defenses. Every trade representative was studying your technology. Every scientist was learning your weaknesses. The council members were starting to realize how completely they had been fooled. The humans had not been sending innocent diplomats and students. They had been sending spies and intelligence agents. But how? Asked the giant tree-like being. Our security systems are perfect. Our screening processes would have detected any deception. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. Your security was designed to detect the kind of threats you understand. Other advanced civilizations with energy-based consciousness or crystal neural networks or collective hive minds. You were not prepared for beings who think like humans. The holographic displays changed again. This time they showed human agents working throughout Council space, maintenance workers who were actually engineers studying alien technology. Entertainers who were really psychologists, learning how different species made decisions. Even some who had married aliens and started families while secretly reporting everything they learned. Humans are very good at pretending to be what others expect them to be, Elena said. We have had thousands of years of practice. We learned to survive by being smarter than predators that were bigger and stronger than us. Prime Zephyrian was trying to process this information. In his millions of years of existence, no species had ever managed to deceive the Council so completely. Your technology should not be advanced enough for this kind of operation. You are right, Dr. Chen admitted. Our technology was not advanced enough when we started, but we learned quickly. The holograms now showed human engineers working with captured alien technology. Ships being taken apart and studied, weapons being tested and improved, communication systems being cracked and understood. Every piece of equipment you sold us was reverse engineered. Every system you showed us was copied and improved. We took your greatest achievements and made them better. Elena added, Humans are very good at taking things apart to see how they work. We have always been curious. We have always asked, what if we did this differently? The truth was becoming clear to the Council members. The humans had not just been preparing for war. They had been preparing to win a war against opponents who should have been completely superior to them. But why? Prime Zephyrian asked. Why go to all this trouble? Why not simply accept integration into our civilization? Elena's expression became serious. Because we have studied your history. We know what happens to species that accept your integration. They lose their independence. They lose their culture. They become servants in your empire. We have seen the records of species that refused you in the past. They were destroyed completely. Their worlds were burned. Their people were scattered or killed. Dr. Chen nodded. Humanity chose a third option. We decided to become strong enough that you would have to treat us as equals instead of subjects. The alarms were still ringing. Reports were still coming in of more and more human ships appearing throughout Council space. The beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia were beginning to understand that their comfortable world was about to change forever. Elena looked up at Prime Zephyrian one last time. "You wanted to know if humanity would submit to your rule," she said quietly. "Here is your answer." The first battle happened near the Vega system, where the Council kept one of their largest military bases. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Indomitable Spirit, watching the enemy fleet approach through the viewing screen. The Council had sent their first armada, 1,000,000 ships representing the combined might of hundreds of advanced civilizations. The alien fleet moved in perfect formation. Each ship was exactly where the mathematical calculations said it should be. Their weapons were charged to optimal levels. Their shields were configured for maximum protection. It was beautiful in the way that a precisely built machine is beautiful. Admiral Torres was a big man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. He had studied every battle the Council had ever fought. He had learned how they thought, how they planned, how they expected their enemies to behave. "Sir," said Commander Lisa Park, his second-in-command, "enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. They are maintaining standard attack formation 7 Alpha. Should we respond with defensive pattern 4? Torres smiled. "No, Commander. Today we teach them something new." The Council fleet continued its approach. On the bridge of the command ship, General Korath of the Hegemony species was confident of victory. The Hegemony looked like giant spiders made of metal and crystal. They had been warriors for millions of years. They had never lost a battle. "The humans have 40,000 ships," Korath reported to his officers. "We have 1,000,000. Their technology is primitive. Their tactics are unknown but certainly inferior. This will be over quickly." Through the communication system, the voices of other alien commanders could be heard coordinating their attack. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together against the human threat. Gas beings that controlled gravity itself. Crystal creatures that could manipulate time. Ancient machines that had forgotten their creators but remembered how to destroy. "Human fleet is not responding to our approach," one of them reported. "They are holding position. Perhaps they are trying to surrender." Korath activated his weapons systems. "No surrender will be accepted. The Council has voted for total destruction." At exactly the calculated moment, the Council fleet opened fire. Energy beams that could cut through planets streaked across space toward the human ships. Missiles that could crack moons by the thousands flew toward their targets. Gravity weapons that could crush stars began to charge. Then something impossible happened. As the alien weapons reached the human fleet, the human ships began to come apart. But they were not being destroyed. They were separating on purpose. Each large ship split into dozens of smaller vessels. What had looked like 40,000 ships suddenly became 500,000 individual fighters. "What is happening?" Korath demanded. "Our sensors show the human fleet has multiplied." The small human ships moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. Instead of maintaining formation, they scattered in all directions. Some dove under the Council fleet. Others climbed above it. Many simply disappeared, using stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. "This is impossible," said an alien commander whose species had never been surprised in battle. "Ships cannot divide like living cells. Metal and energy do not behave this way." Admiral Torres watched the chaos beginning in the enemy fleet. "Fire Plan Omega," he ordered calmly. What looked like missed shots from human weapons suddenly revealed their true purpose. The energy beams that seemed to fly harmlessly past Council ships were actually carrying microscopic machines. These tiny robots immediately began building copies of themselves using materials from space dust and debris. Within minutes, the space around the Council fleet was filled with millions of self-replicating mines. They were too small for alien sensors to detect individually, but together they formed a deadly net around the enemy ships. Then the real attack began. Human ships that had appeared to be destroyed by Council weapons suddenly came back to life. They had been playing dead, using a trick no alien species had ever thought to try. While the enemy believed they were winning, human vessels had been drifting closer and closer to their targets. "Sir!" screamed an alien officer. "The destroyed human ships are firing. They were not destroyed at all." But the worst shock was still coming. As human weapons hit Council ships, the aliens discovered that their own technology was being used against them. The humans had not just stolen alien designs, they had improved them and turned them into weapons their creators had never imagined. A Council ship's shield generator suddenly reversed polarity, trapping the ship in an energy bubble that slowly crushed it. Communication systems began broadcasting human signals that confused alien computers and made them attack their own allies. Weapons that had been built to destroy humans instead turned on their operators. General Korath felt something he had not experienced in his million-year lifespan: fear. How are they doing this? Our technology should be impossible for them to understand. The answer came from Admiral Torres himself. The human commander had opened a communication channel to the Council fleet. "You made a mistake," Torres said in a voice that carried across space to every alien ship. "You assumed that because we are young, we are stupid. You assumed that because our technology seemed primitive, we could not learn." On the screens throughout the Council fleet, Torres' face appeared. He looked tired but determined. "For 3 years, you have been selling us your technology. You thought we were buying toys and simple tools. You did not realize we were buying textbooks. Everything you sold us was taken apart, studied, understood, and improved." Korath watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by opponents who should have been helpless. Ships that had seemed invincible were being destroyed by weapons that used their own power against them. "But more than that," Torres continued, "you made the same mistake that every bully makes. You assumed that the way you fight is the only way to fight. You assumed that because you are logical and predictable, everyone else must be logical and predictable too." The battle was turning into a disaster for the Council. Their perfect formations were breaking apart. Their advanced weapons were useless against enemies who fought in ways their computers could not predict. "Humans do not fight the way you fight," Torres explained. "We do not try to minimize casualties or preserve resources. When we fight to win completely. We fight to make sure our enemies can never threaten us again." In less than 6 hours, the first armada was destroyed. Of the 1 million ships that had attacked the human fleet, fewer than 1,000 escaped. The survivors carried with them reports that seemed impossible. Humans fought like no species the galaxy had ever seen. The news reached the Council station where Elena still stood in the Great Hall. The alien beings who had been so confident a few hours ago now looked at the small human woman with new eyes. Prime Zephyrian's light form was flickering rapidly. For the first time in his existence, he was afraid. "This is just the beginning," Elena said quietly. "You wanted war. Now you have it." The war that followed the destruction of the First Armada was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. For 10,000 years, conflicts between civilizations had been polite affairs. Armies would meet in designated areas. Battles would be fought according to ancient rules. Winners would be decided by mathematical calculations and resource counts. Humanity threw all of those rules away. General Patricia Singh commanded the human forces from a hidden fortress built inside a rogue planet that drifted in the darkness between stars. She was a small woman with steel-gray eyes who had spent her entire life studying war. Not the civilized war that aliens understood, but the brutal, desperate war that humans had fought against each other for thousands of years. "Sir," reported Colonel Davis, her intelligence officer. The Council has mobilized the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th armadas. Total enemy strength is now estimated at 12 million ships. General Singh studied the holographic display that showed the positions of both human and alien forces throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked Council fleets. Blue dots marked human forces. There were far more red dots than blue ones. They are learning from their defeat, she said. Look at their formations. They are no longer clustering their ships together. They are spreading out to prevent our small fighters from getting close. They have also changed their communication protocols, added Dr. James Wright, the Chief Technology Officer. They are using quantum encryption that we have not seen before. They are trying to prevent us from hacking their systems again. General Singh nodded. Good. That means they are taking us seriously now. The question is, are they learning fast enough? She touched a control, and the display changed to show new information. Hidden throughout the galaxy, in places the Council had never thought to look, human forces were moving. But these were not just ships. These were mobile factories, traveling construction sites, and automated mining operations. While they have been building bigger fleets, we have been building an entire civilization, Singh explained. Phase 2 begins now. Across the galaxy, the Council's ancient strongholds came under attack. But humans did not attack the way other species did. Instead of trying to destroy enemy bases, they surrounded them and began to build. On the world of Nexus Prime, home to the Council's greatest military academy, aliens watched in horror as human forces landed not with weapons, but with construction equipment. Within days, massive factories were rising from the planet's surface. These factories began producing ships and weapons at a rate that seemed impossible. How are they building so fast? Demanded General Korath, who had survived the first battle and was now leading the defense of Nexus Prime. It should take years to construct industrial facilities of this size. The answer came from captured human soldiers who seemed strangely willing to explain their methods. Unlike other species, humans did not fight until the last soldier died. When they were outnumbered and defeat was certain, they surrendered. But their surrender came with conditions. "We will tell you everything you want to know," said Captain Maria Santos, a human officer who had been captured during the attack on Nexus Prime. "But you have to listen to all of it." She was brought before a tribunal of Council military leaders. They expected to interrogate a primitive soldier. Instead, they found themselves getting a lesson in human philosophy. "You want to know how we build so fast?" Captain Santos said. "It is because we do not build the way you build. You design everything to be perfect. Every ship must be exactly right. Every weapon must meet precise specifications." The alien officers listened impatiently. They wanted technical information, not lectures. "Humans build things that are good enough to work," Santos continued. "We can make 1,000 ships that are 70% as good as yours in the time it takes you to make one perfect ship. And when our ships break, we fix them quickly instead of rebuilding them from scratch." General Korath interrupted. "Inferior equipment will not win battles against superior forces." Captain Santos smiled. "You are thinking about this wrong. You want to know our secret? Here it is. We do not try to win battles. We try to win wars." The Council officers exchanged confused looks. How could someone win a war without winning battles? "A battle is what happens when two fleets meet in space," Santos explained. "But a war is about everything else. The factories that build the ships, the miners who dig up the materials, the farmers who feed the workers, the teachers who train the engineers." She stood up and walked to a window that showed the human construction sites spreading across the planet below. "While you have been trying to build the perfect fleet to destroy us, we have been building the perfect system to outlast you. We can lose 100 battles and still win the war because we can replace our losses faster than you can destroy us." The truth of her words was becoming clear throughout the galaxy. Human forces were appearing everywhere at once. They were not trying to hold territory in the traditional sense. Instead, they were building new territory wherever they went. On the crystal worlds of the Harmony Collective, human engineers were setting up mining operations that could extract materials from the living crystal itself. The collective had never imagined that anyone would want to mine their sacred crystal forests, so they had no defenses against it. In the gas clouds where the ethereal beings lived, humans were building floating cities that harvested energy directly from the being's life force. The ethereals had thought their realm was impossible for solid matter creatures to inhabit, but humans had found a way. Most disturbing of all, humans were doing something no other species had ever done. They were learning from their enemies while fighting them. Every council ship that was destroyed was studied by human engineers. Every alien weapon that was captured was reverse engineered and improved. Every battle taught humans something new about how their enemies thought and fought. "They are adapting," reported Dr. Zara 5, a artificial intelligence that served as the Council's chief strategic analyst. "Each time we develop a new tactic, they counter it within days. Each time we deploy a new weapon, they find a defense and then turn it against us." Prime Zephyrian was coordinating the Council's response from a heavily fortified command station. His light form flickered with strain as he tried to process the scope of what was happening. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are one species. We are hundreds of species working together. They should not be able to match our combined knowledge and resources." Dr. Zara 5's electronic voice was emotionless as she delivered her analysis. "They are not trying to match us. They are using our own diversity against us. Every species in the Council has different ways of thinking, different priorities, different goals. Humans have learned to predict our behavior by studying our differences. When the crystal hegemony suggests one strategy and the gas collective suggests another, humans know that we will compromise with a plan that satisfies both. This makes us predictable. Meanwhile, all humans think in fundamentally similar ways. They can coordinate their actions across vast distances because they all understand each other's reasoning." Prime Zephyrian was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. The galaxy's greatest strength, its diversity, had become its greatest weakness when fighting an enemy that could adapt to any strategy. "Sir," reported a communication officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They are requesting to speak with you directly." On the main screen, Admiral Torres appeared. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed humans working calmly and efficiently. There was no panic, no fear, just quiet determination. "Prime Zephyrian," Torres said, "I believe it is time for us to discuss terms." The ancient being's light flared with anger. "We do not negotiate with primitives who threaten galactic stability." Torres's expression did not change. "Then you doom your people to destruction. Because this war will not end until one of us is completely defeated. And we will not be the ones who lose." 2 years after the war began, Prime Zephyrian stood in the ruins of what had once been the greatest council chamber in the galaxy. The crystalline walls were cracked and scarred from battle. Many of the floating seats lay broken on the floor. The air still smelled of ozone and burning metal from the final assault. But he was not alone. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy had gathered here one more time. Some were the same council members who had voted for war against humanity. Others were representatives from species that had been freed from council rule during the conflict. All of them were here to witness something that had never happened before in galactic history. Elena Vasquez walked into the chamber wearing the same simple black suit she had worn years earlier. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes, but she also looked satisfied, like someone who had completed a very difficult job. Behind her came other humans: Admiral Torres, General Singh, Dr. Chen, and dozens of officers and scientists who had helped plan humanity's victory. They did not look like conquerors. They looked like people who were tired of fighting and ready to build something better. Members of the galactic community, Elena began, her voice carrying easily through the damaged hall. We are gathered here today not to celebrate victory in war, but to begin the work of peace. Prime Zephyrian's light form was dim now, barely visible in the afternoon light streaming through the broken ceiling. He had aged more in 2 years of war than in the previous 1,000,000 years of his existence. You have won, he said simply. Humanity has proven that it cannot be conquered or controlled. What do you want from us? Elena smiled. The same smile that had started everything. We want the same thing we have always wanted. We want to be part of a galactic community where every species can grow and thrive according to its own nature. But that is impossible, said General Korath, who was now missing 2 of his crystal legs from the final battle. Different species have different needs, different goals, different ways of thinking. There must be order. There must be hierarchy. You are right that there must be order, Elena agreed. But you are wrong about hierarchy. Order does not require some species to rule over others. Order can come from cooperation and mutual respect. Dr. Chen stepped forward with a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it existed now. Instead of the rigid territorial boundaries that had existed under Council rule, the map showed something that looked almost like a living organism. Networks of trade routes connected different systems. Shared research stations orbited neutral stars. Mixed colonies where multiple species lived and worked together dotted the outer rim. This is what we have been building while the Council was trying to destroy us, Dr. Chen explained. A new kind of civilization. Not one where the oldest and strongest species rule over the youngest and weakest, but one where every species contributes its unique strengths to the common good. The display zoomed in to show specific examples. On a world that had once been a Council prison planet, humans and aliens were working together to terraform the surface into a garden paradise. In asteroid belts that had been strip-mined and abandoned, new technologies were being developed that could restore entire ecosystems. How is this possible? Asked a representative of the Harmony Collective, whose crystal structure sparkled with confusion. Our species have been enemies for millions of years. We have fundamental differences that cannot be reconciled. Elena nodded. Yes, you do have differences. But humanity has learned something important. Differences are not weaknesses to be eliminated. They are strengths to be celebrated. She gestured, and the hologram showed mixed crews working on human ships. Crystal beings who could process information faster than any computer worked alongside gas creatures who could see patterns in data that solid beings missed. Ancient rock species who remembered the history of entire star systems shared their knowledge with young races who brought fresh ideas and new perspectives. But how do you prevent conflict? Prime Zephyrian asked. How do you stop species from competing for resources or territory? Admiral Torres answered that question. We change what they are competing for. Instead of fighting over fixed resources, we compete to create new resources. Instead of battling for territory, we compete to explore new territory. The hologram changed to show vast construction projects in previously empty space habitats that could house billions of beings, energy collectors that could harness the power of entire stars, terraforming projects that were creating new worlds instead of fighting over old ones. The galaxy is enormous, Torres continued. There is room for every species to grow and expand without taking anything away from anyone else, but only if we work together instead of against each other. Prime Zephyrian was trying to understand this new concept. In his experience, civilizations grew by conquering and absorbing other civilizations. The idea that they could grow by cooperating was alien to him. What about leadership? He asked. Who will make the decisions? Who will resolve disputes? Who will maintain order? Elena smiled again. Everyone will. That is the point. She explained the new galactic compact that humanity proposed. Instead of a council of ancient species ruling over younger ones, there would be a federation where every species had a voice proportional to its contribution to the common good. Species that discovered new technologies would help teach them to others. Species that developed new art or music or literature would share their culture with the galaxy. Species that found new worlds or new resources would help coordinate their use for everyone's benefit. But what about us? Asked a council member whose species had ruled for centuries. What happens to those who have lost power? Will you exile us? Execute us? Force us into slavery? Elena shook her head. None of those things. We will ask you to do the same thing we ask of every species. Contribute your strengths to the common good. She turned to Prime Zephyrian. Your species has experience in organization and long-term planning. The new Federation will need that knowledge. General Korath's people are natural warriors. We will need them to help defend against threats from outside the galaxy. The Crystal Collective understands information processing better than anyone. The gas beings see patterns that others miss. The ancient ones remember history that would otherwise be lost. Dr. Chen added, Humanity's contribution is not our technology or our military strength. Our contribution is our ability to see potential in others and help them achieve it. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of the strong ruling over the weak, every species would be valued for what it could contribute. Instead of ancient species looking down on younger ones, experience would be combined with innovation. Prime Zephyrian was quiet for a long time. Around him, other beings were discussing this new possibility in dozens of languages. Some were skeptical, others were excited. All of them were thinking about what their species might become in this new galaxy. Finally, the ancient being spoke. Why? He asked Elena. You have won completely. You could rule the galaxy as conquerors. Why offer us partnership instead? Elena's answer was simple and profound. Because we have learned that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. The greatest victory is turning your enemies into friends. She gestured toward the broken chamber around them. This place was built to separate species from each other, to maintain divisions and hierarchies. We propose to tear it down and build something better in its place. A place where every species can reach for the stars not by stepping on others, but by lifting each other up. The vote was unanimous. Even Prime Zephyrian, who had lost everything he had spent millions of years building, voted to join the new Federation. As the beings filed out of the ruined chamber for the last time, Elena stood alone for a moment. Through the broken walls, she could see the construction ships that were already beginning to build the new galactic capital. It would be a place where every species had a home, where every culture was celebrated, where every dream had a chance to become reality. Admiral Torres joined her. Do you think it will work? He asked quietly. Elena smiled as she watched human and alien children playing together in the temporary gardens that had been planted among the ruins. Look around you, she said. It is already working. The galaxy had been at war. Now it was at peace. Not the peace of the conquered, but the peace of the united. For the first time in galactic history, every species could look up at the stars and see not threats to be fought, but friends to be made. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun.